One of President Donald Trump's first official actions since taking back the White House took aim at government censorship. Part of the executive action taken this week by President Donald Trump includes an order to not allow the government to limit free speech.
In America, we believe in free speech, and we're bringing it back starting today to stop the weaponization. Oh, do I know about that?
Talk to us about what exactly you found when you were digging into Microsoft and their background and their dealings in this censorship.
It goes very, very deep. Microsoft mentioned earlier their partnership with NewsGuard, a professional censorship company. They've also made a point of hiring almost every bad actor from the government side of the censorship industrial complex. You might remember something called Hamilton 68. Hamilton 68 was this dashboard developed by government-funded nonprofits that in 2017 or 2018, I believe, sold itself to tech companies as something that could track down Russian agents and the spreaders of Russian influence on social media. And they developed huge lists of Twitter users and other social media users that they claimed were Russian agents. Turns out they were all American users, American conservatives, American Trump supporters that were being falsely labeled Russian agents. This is one of the things that came out during the Twitter files. The guy who built that dashboard, a former FBI counterintelligence official called Clint Watts, was later hired by Microsoft. That's just one example. Another Microsoft board member, Reid Hoffman, who, notorious Trump hater, who funded a very similar thing in the Alabama runoff election in 2017, where these fake accounts were created to create the impression of a Russian intelligence operation that could then be used to justify the social media censorship of Americans. He's a board member at Microsoft. They also funded the Center for an Informed Public at the University of Washington, one of the 4 members of the Election Integrity Partnership, that notorious collection of organizations which was hatched in DHS, hatched by the government, and played a massive role in censoring the 2020 election. Millions of posts were censored as a result of that group's efforts. They were funded by Microsoft. And it would be one thing. It would be one thing if Microsoft was scaling back on all of this, but they're not. They're still partnered with NewsGuard, and they've shown no indication that they're scaling back on any of this. And yet they still seem to be in favor in Washington. They still seem to be getting favors. And I hope that many of the people who are now being appointed, who have a great history of monitoring big tech censorship and being real warriors in the fight against big tech censorship, will read this report and take a look at some of these things. Because in some cases, it's actually getting worse. Just one example, Activision Blizzard, which is a massive video games company owned by Microsoft, sent out a memo in their internal Discord server saying they're not going to roll back DEI initiatives. In fact, they're going to double down on them. Another example, OpenAI just launched a tool called Operator, which is an AI agent that can sort of run your computer and do online searches for you. Only 4 news sources are used by Operator currently: The Atlantic, Axios, AP, and Reuters. Not a single conservative news source as part of that. And we've seen huge political bias from OpenAI in the past as well. So, the question I'd ask of Microsoft is, are they going to keep all these censorship programs that censored Americans and censored Trump supporters nonstop? Are going to keep their relationship with NewsGuard? That's the biggest thing in my book. While still expecting to be in favor in Washington. That's like a very strange set of events.
Now, where can people go to get a direct copy of this report so they can read it for themselves and get all of these details?
Of course. So it's at the foundationforfreedomonline.com. And the piece is called How Microsoft Helped Build the Censorship Industry. Very, very important piece. So go check it out if you can.
No, I think you absolutely should. And of course, you and Mike Benz are doing really the yeoman's work over there. Of course, Benz really coming down hard on USAID. By the way, there's a protest going on in front of USAID that's happening right now. Apparently, Ilhan Omar is out there, Jamie Raskin. They're saying no to Doge. And it's just one of the most wonderful things I've ever seen. All of the worst people are completely activated. But Alan, this is something that I think we all should focus on because, look, I think that Elon buying X has led to a sort of general de-emphasis on the censorship question. So a de-emphasis on wanting to fight back against censorship, and certainly a de-emphasis on having the government come in and actually put some controls on social media, like for example, an internet bill of rights for the user, or questions about who controls your data when it comes to your online activity, who controls that online footprint. And that's something that, by the way, the FCC should be looking into. So let me ask you this. Do you think that that's something that these latest moves, from hiring the professor to be general counsel, to have Brennan Carr over there as well, who's been a huge advocate for this, do you think that there's action that the FCC can and should still take on the censorship front?
I think there certainly is, and not just the FCC, but also the FTC when it comes to collusive behaviors like advertising agencies getting together and boycotting social media platforms because because they're opposed to what American social media users are saying, when they act in concert as an industry. That is very anti-competitive behavior, which is right in the FTC's jurisdiction. I think the FCC can also do a lot here because, there have been regulations in the past that, made companies, for example, under the Obama administration, actually, there was net neutrality, which made internet service providers common carriers. And that subjects them to all sorts of requirements about what they can and cannot carry. So I think there's a lot of area where the FCC can provide scrutiny. And I think the thing about, you mentioned Elon Musk taking over X and how that sort of ushered in a new era of free speech on social media. It would be one thing if, coming back to Microsoft, it'd be one thing if they scaled back their censorship programs. So Mark Zuckerberg, do I necessarily believe he's completely sincere in, the changes in his political opinions over the past 6 months or so? Not necessarily. I think he's a very pragmatic guy. But Facebook has made some real changes. It's, scaled back some of its content moderation policies. Zuckerberg's even gone on Joe Rogan and talked about in pretty a fair amount of detail about how the government pressured Facebook to censor, and how Biden officials would call up Facebook officials and yell at them and get them to censor content. So they've actually taken concrete steps to, stake out a position against censorship. Microsoft has done none of that. And yet they're still in the ascendancy in Washington, which is interesting to see.